Two elderly individuals walked into a luxury car dealership dressed in old, modest clothing. They gently approached a high-end vehicle and politely asked a few questions about its features. The sales associate looked at them with suspicion, his cold eyes scanning their simple attire and dark skin. He sneered, his tone dripping with contempt. "I think you two are in the wrong place. These cars start at $900,000. People like you certainly can't afford them." A soft laugh and whispers echoed among the employees and customers nearby. Feeling insulted, the elderly couple quietly left the store. The next morning, two rare Rolls-Royce boat-tail cars gently pulled up in front of the dealership. As the doors opened, the same elderly couple from the day before stepped out, followed by their son, a well-known CEO dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. The sales associate stood there, stunned and speechless. He never expected this turn of events. The glass door of the luxury car dealership opened with a soft and elegant sound, signaling the arrival of two new customers. An elderly couple, both black, entered with a humble and unexpectedly simple demeanor. The man wore an old hat, a slightly wrinkled white shirt, and khaki pants faded with time. The woman stood beside him, dressed in a modest yet neat dress, her hair carefully styled in an updo, her gentle face showing a mix of shyness and slight anxiety. The atmosphere in the high-end dealership seemed to thicken with their presence. Curious and judgmental glances from customers and sales associates turned toward the couple. The lively chatter that had filled the room earlier suddenly hushed, creating an eerie silence that blanketed the luxurious space, glittering with crystal chandeliers and million-dollar cars. A young female customer, wearing Gucci sunglasses, slightly lowered them on her nose and stared at the couple with a look of disdain, as though they were disrupting the refined atmosphere of the place. A white male associate, impeccably dressed in a black suit with slicked-back hair, glanced over at them from afar, his eyes filled with skepticism. He even whispered something to a colleague, a smirk tugging at his lips as he quickly adjusted his tie, as if reminding himself to be cautious when dealing with inappropriate customers. The elderly couple, perhaps accustomed to society's judgmental stares, slowly ventured further into the lavish space. Their eyes sparkled at the sight of the sleek, shiny cars, but they kept their distance, as though afraid to damage anything so precious. The woman gently took her husband's hand, softly speaking just loud enough for him to hear. "I don't feel right about this. Should we leave, dear?" The man lightly patted her hand, reassuring her. "We haven't done anything wrong. We're just here to look at cars, don't worry." Though he tried to maintain composure, the pain in his eyes was unmistakable, a subtle yet deeply genuine sadness. He understood that no matter how modest his shirt or how fine his suit, his skin color would always be the first thing to draw skeptical glances and painful judgment. In a far corner, the sales associate from earlier continued to watch them coldly. He adjusted his collar, took a deep breath, and then began to approach them with an air of arrogance. Everything seemed to unfold like a forewarning of something unpleasant about to happen. The sales associate in his sleek black suit approached the elderly couple, exuding confidence and arrogance as though he were stepping forward to handle an unusual situation. The sound of his expensive leather shoes echoed lightly on the marble floor, the clear tone cold and distant. He stopped in front of the couple, deliberately keeping a distance just enough to show his contempt through his gaze, slowly scanning them from head to toe with malicious intent. A half-smile appeared on his handsome but cold face, his sharp blue eyes like daggers, with no attempt to hide the disdain clearly etched in every feature. "Good morning," he spoke in a tone that was overly polite but dripping with sarcasm. "I think there's been some mistake here. People like you really shouldn't be in here." The elderly man furrowed his brow, confused. "What do you mean?" "We're just here to look." The sales associate sneered. his mocking gaze growing even more apparent as he emphasized each word with venom. "What I mean is, this dealership is only for people who can actually afford it. The cars here start at $900,000, certainly not for—" He purposely paused, his gaze falling on their skin, then continued, "People like you." As soon as he finished speaking, faint laughter erupted from behind him, where customers and colleagues stood watching as if it were some kind of free entertainment. A young male customer, standing nearby, covered his mouth to hide the smile of disdain. A blonde female employee, holding a catalog, turned her face away slightly, a smirk forming at the corners of her mouth. The elderly couple felt their hearts tighten, their faces burning with shame. The eyes on them now felt like thousands of needles pricking their self-esteem. The wife gripped her husband's hand tighter, her eyes welling up with tears, but she struggled to maintain composure, refusing to let them fall. She knew exactly what was happening, but could hardly believe that in this moment, in the middle of a sophisticated city, they were still facing such blatant racial discrimination. The husband, though deeply hurt, held his head high and stared straight into the sales associate's eyes. Calmly and slowly, he said, "We're just here to look at cars. You have no right to insult us." The sales associate shrugged with a challenge, crossing his arms in front of his chest in a haughty stance. "Oh, I'm not insulting you. I'm just stating the truth." The air in the dealership grew thick, the scrutiny of every gaze becoming sharper. The luxury cars, the sparkling crystal lights, seemed almost to bear silent witness to the humiliation and injustice unfolding. In the distance, Emily Torres, the Latin sales associate, happened to witness the entire incident. Her eyes widened in shock, a deep sense of indignation rising within her. She gripped the stack of documents in her hands, feeling that she could not stand still for another moment before such an unjust spectacle. Emily Torres was about to step forward to intervene, but before she could take a step, she saw the elderly couple gently turn around and slowly head toward the door. They didn't argue, didn't try to explain, nor did they get angry or make a scene. Only a long, suffocating silence hung in the air as they slowly walked past the looks of disdain, curiosity, and scorn directed at them. The luxurious glass door closed behind them with a heavy, cold finality, marking an abrupt end to what had just transpired. Standing outside the door, the woman trembled slightly, gripping her husband's arm as if seeking a moment of peace. The couple stood there quietly, under the bright sunlight, but their hearts felt as cold as if they had just gone through a snowstorm. The man let out a soft sigh, his calm expression now unable to hide the deep sorrow in his eyes. His shoulders slumped, as if all the strength and pride he had were suddenly stolen from him. He looked down at his old shoes, his voice dropping with bitterness. "I'm sorry, dear, we shouldn't have come here." The wife gently shook her head, her eyes still brimming with tears, but her resolve strong as she held them back. "Don't blame yourself. It's not our fault. I just didn't expect—" She paused for a moment, struggling to swallow her tears. "I didn't expect that in this day and age people would still look at us like that." Inside the dealership, through the transparent glass, the sales associate from earlier stood there, watching them with a self-satisfied, smug expression, pleased with having gotten rid of the undeserving customers. He turned away, flashing a smug smile at his colleagues. Quiet laughter still echoed, and whispers continued to spread, talking about the inappropriate appearance of the elderly black couple. These invisible waves of gossip slammed against the self-esteem of the couple standing outside. The elderly couple quietly descended the stone steps, the harsh sunlight making their sad and helpless expressions stand out even more. They stood there, on the sidewalk, silently watching the hurried traffic passing by in front of them. The outside world was still bustling and lively, but they felt as though they had been completely isolated from it. Strangers, even in the very city they had once believed would accept them unconditionally. The woman turned back for one last look through the glass, meeting Emily's gaze full of sympathy and helplessness. Emily was still standing there, as if she wanted to run after them and apologize, but couldn't find the words in time. The two women, one old and one young, exchanged a brief glance, but in those few seconds, a deep understanding passed between them. The woman turned away, and finally the tears fell, running down her face, leaving marks of time. "Let's go home, dear," the husband gently spoke. "This place isn't for us." They walked away, their figures blending into the crowd, but the silent pain they carried with them hadn't faded. This deep wound they would carry in their hearts as an injury that would be hard to heal, a wound no one would ever truly understand. Just as the elderly couple was about to blend into the bustling crowd on the sidewalk, a soft yet firm voice suddenly called out from behind, "Please wait a moment." Emily Torres, the young Latin sales associate, quickly stepped through the large glass door and walked toward them with an apologetic but determined expression. Her gaze no longer showed hesitation. Instead, it was filled with deep sincerity and resolve. "I sincerely apologize for what just happened," Emily said earnestly, her voice trembling with emotion. "Those words do not represent all of us. I truly hope you'll give me the chance to make up for this mistake." The elderly couple turned to look at Emily, surprised and moved by the young woman's genuine intent. In that moment, the honesty in Emily's warm brown eyes eased some of the pain in their hearts. "Thank you, dear, but perhaps we shouldn't," the elderly man replied gently, still hesitant in his voice. Emily shook her head slightly, her tone more assertive now. "You've done nothing wrong. Please, allow me to invite you back inside so I can properly introduce you to the car you were interested in. At the very least, I want you to leave here with peace of mind, not carry away such an unpleasant memory." Her sincere words made the elderly couple exchange a glance, as if seeking mutual agreement in each other's eyes. Finally, the wife nodded gently to her husband, her gaze beginning to brighten with a glimmer of hope. "Yes, thank you, dear. We'll come back for a moment." Emily smiled, the warm smile seeming to dispel the lingering coldness. She courteously guided them back inside the dealership, this time with a confident posture, as though wanting to assert to everyone that these elderly guests were the most respected customers in the room. As they passed through the main hall, Emily briefly caught the mocking gaze of the sales associate from earlier, but this time she did not look away. Instead, she stared directly at him, challenging him with her eyes. He frowned, clearly uncomfortable, feeling as if he had been diminished in front of his colleagues. The silence in the dealership was now tense, as other employees began to take notice. A few even whispered to each other, their eyes filled with curiosity and skepticism. Emily gently led the elderly couple to a sleek, black car, its glossy surface reflecting the lights from the ceiling like thousands of tiny, twinkling stars. She began speaking passionately and attentively, as if introducing the car to her own family. "This is the latest model from the brand, with a special design and superior technology. It has a powerful engine, handcrafted interiors, and the most modern safety features." The elderly couple listened intently to Emily, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for this rare act of kindness. For the first time since entering the dealership, they felt true respect, without being judged or looked down upon because of their appearance or skin color. In the distance, the sales associate from earlier stood still, his expression growing darker, his hand unconsciously clenched into a fist, filled with discomfort and frustration. He hadn't expected a young woman like Emily to challenge him in front of everyone, but Emily didn't care about his hostile gaze. At this moment, the only thing that mattered to her was making sure that these elderly customers felt comfortable and treated fairly. To her, kindness wasn't an obligation. It was a natural response, especially when faced with the injustice right in front of her. Emily gently opened the door to the luxurious car and carefully invited the elderly couple to step inside. The sincere smile on her face remained, as if to affirm to the world that they truly deserved the best. The moment the elderly couple settled into the soft leather seats, the quiet space of the car immediately made them feel at ease, like a safe haven away from the scrutinizing gazes outside. "How does the car feel? Is it comfortable?" Emily asked softly, leaning down to speak more intimately with the couple. The elderly man lightly touched the steering wheel, his eyes briefly lighting up as he sensed the meticulous craftsmanship in every design detail. He nodded gently, his warm voice now less weighed down with sorrow. "It's very comfortable, dear. The car is truly beautiful. Everything fits perfectly." Emily smiled with understanding, continuing to explain the car's features with as much care and sincerity as she could muster. With each word, each gesture, she tried to soothe the invisible pain that these special guests had just endured. "This car is not only luxurious, but most importantly, it's safe and reliable, perfect for long family trips," Emily said with bright eyes, as if sharing something incredibly precious with her dearest loved ones. The woman smiled softly, her aged hand resting gently on her husband's, full of affection. "Thank you, dear. You've really helped us a lot, not because of the car, but because of your kindness and goodness," she said, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. From afar, the sales associate from earlier was still seething with anger. He stood by the front desk, casting annoyed glances at Emily, his expression cold as ice. To him, inviting two unworthy customers to sit in the car was nothing short of a direct insult to his arrogant pride. "What is she doing? What a waste of time," he muttered, loudly enough for several nearby colleagues to hear, trying to undermine the noble act of kindness Emily was offering. But Emily was undeterred by her colleagues' attitude. She continued her conversation with the elderly couple, without any hint of discrimination or hesitation, as if the world had shrunk to just the three of them. This sincerity transformed the judgmental gazes around her into admiration and silence, making those who had once accepted the prejudices now reflect on their own biases. Finally, when they stepped out of the car, the elderly couple seemed to have regained their dignity and faith in human kindness. The man gently took Emily's hand, his eyes full of deep gratitude. "Dear, today you've shown me that kindness still exists everywhere. We truly thank you." Emily bowed her head slightly, offering a gentle and humble smile. "No, it's I who should thank you. You've reminded me that kindness is always worth more than anything else." The elderly couple left the dealership feeling much lighter, no longer burdened by the sadness and shame they had felt earlier. Outside, the evening light had begun to fall, creating a soft yet profound scene, much like the beautiful emotions Emily had awakened in their hearts. As for Emily, she stood there watching the elderly couple walk away, her heart lighter, yet still tinged with a trace of discomfort, thinking about the injustice they had just faced. She didn't realize that the kindness she showed today would not only be met with gratitude, but would soon become a much greater turning point than she could have imagined. That evening, the warm golden lights gently illuminated the vast villa, casting a soft glow on the elegant walls and luxurious furnishings. But tonight's family dinner was unusually quiet. The elderly couple sat across from each other, silently eating, their eyes downcast on their favorite dishes that they no longer found appetizing. Only the sound of silverware gently touching the porcelain plates filled the still air, creating a quiet yet aching silence. Their son, Michael, the young CEO well known in the black business community, had been silently observing his parents since the start of the meal. Normally, they were cheerful, chatting away, and sharing small stories from their day. But tonight, their eyes were full of contemplation, as if they were carrying an unspeakable burden. Michael gently set his silverware down, took a small sip of water, and then softly broke the silence. "Is something going on with you two today? I've noticed you've seemed down since you got home." The elderly couple was startled for a moment, looking up at their son with hesitation. The father cleared his throat, trying to force a smile to mask the pain still faintly visible on his face. "Oh, it's nothing, son. We're just a bit tired." But Michael knew his parents better than that. He tilted his head slightly, his gaze filled with concern, his voice soft and reassuring. "I know you two better than anyone. If something's wrong, please share it with me." At that moment, the mother could no longer hold back, her eyes slowly filling with tears. She looked at her husband, then at her son, her voice choking in her throat. "Actually, today we went to a car dealership to look at a car." She paused for a moment, took a deep breath to steady herself, and continued, "But there, they didn't welcome us. They said we didn't fit in, that we couldn't afford it. We felt so hurt." Michael's eyes narrowed, his face growing serious. As a successful CEO, he understood all too well the judgmental glances and the subtle disdain his parents had just endured. But he hadn't expected that even his parents, the kindest, most humble people, would face such unfair treatment. He took a deep breath, his voice calm but filled with strength and determination. "Mom, Dad, you did nothing wrong. The people who treated you like that are the ones at fault. They've lost their sense of self-respect and professional ethics." The father sighed, speaking slowly. "We know, but that doesn't make the pain any less, son. We thought the world was better now, but it turns out prejudice still exists, lingering and silent." Michael looked at his parents with deep, troubled eyes. A strong sense of resolve rose within him, knowing he would not let this go quietly. Not only for his parents' honor, but for justice and dignity for people like them. People who deserved the respect they were born with. "Don't worry," Michael said softly but with certainty. "This can't be left like this. I will take care of it for you. But right now, the most important thing is that you both rest and don't think about it anymore." The elderly couple looked at their son, nodding gently, feeling a mix of pride and comfort. No matter how harsh the world outside might be, at least they had a peaceful place to return to, and a son who would always stand by them through any storm. That evening, the dinner passed in a quieter, more gentle silence. But Michael knew deep in his heart that this was just the beginning. As dinner came to an end, Michael gently led his parents to the spacious living room, where the soft golden lights illuminated the plush leather sofas. He silently sat across from them, waiting with patient concern, sensing that his parents were still holding something back, something they hadn't yet said. After a few minutes of silence, the father cleared his throat, looking at his wife as if seeking a bit of courage. Finally, he decided to speak, his voice low, each word seeming to come from the depths of his heart. "Actually, today wasn't just about people looking down on our appearance, son." He hesitated for a moment, then continued, "It's also about the way they looked at our skin, the way they said that people like us don't belong there." Michael's eyes immediately hardened. His hands unconsciously clenched into fists, but he forced himself to remain calm. His father continued, his face showing deep bitterness and hurt. They didn't just judge us by our old clothes, they judged us by our skin color. They outright said that people like us can't afford it, as if they had made their judgment after one look. The mother wiped away her tears, her voice trembling with both frustration and sorrow. They even laughed at us. In a place filled with so many people, we felt like we were out of place, like we didn't have any value. Michael sat there, his eyes flashing with intense anger, but he immediately took a deep breath, forcing himself to suppress the rage. Deep down, he knew that a burst of anger would solve nothing, but the raw truth of what he had just heard made his heart tighten with bitterness. "Mom, Dad," Michael spoke after a long pause, his voice lower and colder than usual. "Did they say anything else that was more offensive?" The father shook his head slowly, his gaze still full of pain. "No, son. Just those words alone were enough to hurt us deeply." Michael stood up, slowly walking to the large window that looked out over the garden, trying to calm himself. He understood his parents' feelings all too well, for he had experienced similar subtle prejudices many times before. But the fact that his parents, kind, humble people who had never wanted to hurt anyone, had been disrespected like this made his anger burn even stronger. He clenched his fist lightly, his eyes gazing out into the distance, but his voice was unusually firm. "Mom, Dad, the hardest part is that even now, some people still think they have the right to look down on others simply because of their skin color. I won't let this go." The mother looked at her son with a hint of worry, her voice trembling slightly as she asked, "But what are you going to do? We don't want this to affect you." Michael turned around and gave a reassuring smile, full of confidence, but his eyes were cold and resolute in a way his parents had never seen before. "Don't worry, Mom, Dad. I know exactly what I need to do. This isn't just for you, but for anyone who's ever been treated unfairly, just like us." The atmosphere in the living room was now more tense than ever. Michael knew this was no longer a small matter. It was a deep wound, an injustice that he was determined to confront and resolve once and for all. He knew that tomorrow he would take action, and he wouldn't let anyone easily forget what had happened today. After a heavy moment of silence, the father slowly looked up at his son, his eyes filled with concern and a hint of lingering pain. His voice was soft, yet thoughtful. "Son, I've always wondered, why do they look down on us just because of our skin color and the way we dress? We've never wanted to trouble or hurt anyone." That question seemed to echo through the stillness of the room, silently weaving its way into Michael's heart, making him pause to think. Once again, he looked into his parents' eyes, where the most genuine emotions resided, the silent pain they had always tried to hide behind their strong exterior. Michael sat down close to them, his gaze no longer that of a powerful CEO, but of a son who was deeply sharing his most heartfelt thoughts. He responded softly but firmly, speaking clearly with each word. "Father, they look down on others because they've allowed their prejudices to cloud their vision. Prejudice leads them to confuse appearances, skin color, or clothing with a person's true worth." He paused for a moment, his gaze briefly tinged with sadness, but still calm. "But in reality, this says nothing about us. It only reflects their distorted souls, the poverty of their understanding." The mother looked at Michael, her voice gentle as if seeking comfort. "But is there any way to change that, son? We've lived our lives with humility and kindness, and yet sometimes we still feel so helpless in the face of such injustice." Michael gently took his mother's hand, his eyes filled with empathy and resolve. "Mom, I understand that feeling, but we can't change everyone. All we can do is take action to show them they are wrong. I believe that when we stand up to defend our dignity, we are helping to change the way many others see the world." On a deeper level, Michael understood that his parents, people who had lived their lives gently and had never sought to fight with anyone, were now enduring a kind of hurt they didn't deserve. This realization spurred him more than ever to do something concrete and clear, not only to protect his parents but also to raise his voice against the injustice and racial discrimination that still existed out there. The father slowly nodded, his eyes now free of surprise, replaced with empathy and a touch of relief. It seemed that Michael's strong and insightful words had helped him understand many things, and the wound in his heart was beginning to heal, at least a little. "You're right, Michael. Perhaps we've become too accustomed to enduring and letting things slide, but sometimes we need to stand up, not to seek revenge, but to make others understand that discrimination is wrong." Michael smiled gently, his eyes now blazing with determination and a fierce belief. "Exactly, Dad. It's the small things we do today that can bring about big changes tomorrow." The atmosphere in the room had eased significantly. Everyone could feel that they had just shared a profound and meaningful conversation about the true value of each person, far beyond prejudice, skin color, or appearances. Michael knew that, right now, he was ready to take action, not only to restore his parents' dignity, but to send a clear message to everyone out there about respect, equality, and true compassion. And for him, the story was only just beginning. As night fell and blanketed the city, the entire mansion sank into an absolute silence. Michael sat alone in his private office, the dim light casting soft shadows on the framed certificates and prestigious awards adorning the walls. But tonight, those things held no meaning for him, as in his mind there was only one thing: the injustice his parents had just endured. He turned his office chair towards the window, gazing at the city lights twinkling below, but his eyes were lost in thought. The discriminatory words and the contemptuous gaze of the sales associate still echoed in his mind, making him feel suffocated by the anger that had yet to subside. Michael gently picked up his phone and dialed a familiar number. The phone rang with short, sharp tones, and just seconds later someone on the other end answered in a respectful tone, "Good evening, Mr. Michael. How can I assist you tonight?" Michael remained calm, his voice deep, clear, and commanding. "Tomorrow morning, I want 2 Rolls-Royce boat-tail cars delivered to the downtown dealership at 9 a.m. sharp. Make sure everyone sees them." The person on the other end was slightly taken aback, but quickly responded with complete professionalism. "Yes, sir, I'll arrange it immediately. Is there anything else you'd like to request?" Michael paused for a moment before continuing in a decisive tone, but this time with a hint of coldness that was more than usual. "At 9 a.m., my parents and I will be there. I want this to be more than just a transaction. I want it to be a clear statement." "I understand, sir," came the swift and respectful reply, and the call ended. Michael placed the phone down, leaned back in his chair, and took a deep breath. Inside, he felt an unusual calm, one that wasn't the calm of letting things slide, but the calm of strength, the determination to fight back against injustice with resolution. The plan he had just set in motion was not merely an action to restore his parents' dignity, but on a deeper level, he wanted to teach those people a clear lesson about respect, about how no one should ever be judged by the color of their skin or their appearance. Those people needed to understand that true power wasn't in the flashy exterior, but in one's dignity and self-respect. On the other side of the city, in a luxurious yet cold apartment, the sales associate sat comfortably with an expensive glass of wine. a smug smile on his face as he recalled the hurt expression of the undeserving customers. He believed he had acted correctly, that he had every right to pick and choose his customers. But little did he know, in just a few hours, that arrogant smile would completely vanish. As the night passed, every moment felt thick with quiet, tense anticipation. Michael sat there, quietly watching the city fall into slumber, but inside he was bubbling with resolve, ready for a decisive action the next day. He wanted to make sure that tomorrow, everyone, especially those who had insulted his parents, would remember one important thing. No one has the right to look down on another person just because of their appearance or the color of their skin. As the first light of dawn broke and the city streets remained quiet, two gleaming Rolls-Royce boat-tail cars slowly pulled up to the front of the luxury car dealership, exuding power and grandeur. The mysterious black paint of the cars reflected the early sunlight, creating flashes of light that caught the curious eyes of passers-by. The entire staff at the dealership immediately turned their attention to the sight. Everyone was drawn to the large windows, their gazes filled with surprise and admiration. Even the white sales associate from the previous day, who had been smugly chatting with his colleagues, turned in surprise, his sense of disbelief mixed with cautious curiosity. "Who's showing off so early this morning?" he muttered with a faint sneer, trying to appear calm, but an unease began to rise within him. As the car doors opened, the entire dealership fell into a tense silence. All eyes turned to the vehicles, eagerly awaiting the mysterious figure who would step out. Then, from the first Rolls-Royce, Michael stepped out. He stood tall, his face calm, exuding an unmistakable air of confidence and authority. Right behind Michael, his parents also stepped out, in the very same simple clothes they had worn the previous day when they had been disrespected right here. They appeared humble, yet now radiated a quiet dignity under the gaze of everyone in the dealership. At that moment, the sales associate's face turned pale. He swallowed hard, his heart racing, realizing something incredibly serious. The very elderly black couple he had mocked and dismissed the day before were now stepping out of the world's rarest and most expensive cars. Nearby, a few colleagues began whispering anxiously, the atmosphere in the dealership suddenly heavy with tension. "Isn't that the couple who was insulted yesterday?" a young female employee murmured, her eyes filled with confusion. "This is a big deal," another employee replied, their voice trembling. Michael walked forward, standing between his parents, and directed his sharp gaze straight into the dealership. His eyes swept across the room, stopping right at the sales associate's face. It was a fleeting moment, but it was enough to make the man feel completely exposed. His previous confidence and arrogance evaporated instantly, replaced by fear and deep shame. Michael calmly opened the door and entered the dealership, his parents following him. They walked with quiet humility, but their eyes no longer held any shame. Now, all the gazes that had once looked down on them were lowered, avoiding the undeniable truth unfolding before them. They had made a grave mistake in judging people based solely on appearances and skin color. Emily Torres, standing silently from a distance, felt her heart constrict with emotion and surprise. She had never imagined that the modest couple from yesterday would return in such a powerful and dignified manner. Her gaze shifted to one of sincere admiration as she looked at Michael and his parents, realizing that what she was witnessing was not just personal retribution, but a profound message about human worth. Michael stopped in the middle of the showroom, his voice calm but resonant with strength. "Today, I am here to remind all of us of an important lesson about dignity, respect, and the mistake of judging others based on appearance, and I trust everyone here understands exactly why." Each word Michael spoke was like a sharp blade digging deep into the pride of the sales associate, causing him to tremble with fear and embarrassment. At that moment, he understood that the mistake from yesterday was no longer a minor issue. It had become the end of his arrogance and prejudices. And here, before the eyes of everyone, Michael had officially begun the most powerful battle of all. A battle to restore justice and dignity for his parents, while also sending a powerful, undeniable message to all. Never look down on anyone simply because of their skin color or their humble appearance. As soon as Michael finished speaking, he calmly surveyed the dealership, his authoritative gaze sweeping over each employee who stood frozen in place. He took a quiet step forward toward the manager, who was now stepping out of his office, his face a mix of confusion and anxiety. "I would like to request to review the security footage from yesterday's incident," Michael spoke, his voice calm but loud enough for the entire room to hear. "I believe we need to clarify everything in front of everyone here." That request immediately made the already tense atmosphere even more suffocating. All eyes shifted toward the white sales associate, the one who, now, had lost all color from his face. His hands began to shake slightly. He tried to avoid the stares, but the guilt and fear made it impossible for him to stay still. The manager quickly understood the gravity of the situation, nodding swiftly, his voice polite but filled with tension. "Yes, we'll check the footage immediately. Please give us a moment." The room fell into an almost suffocating silence. The waiting felt endless. With every passing second, the tension and anticipation in the room grew. The sales associate had completely lost his previous confidence. Sweat started to bead on his forehead, and his eyes were frantic, constantly darting toward the manager's office, as if hoping for a way out. A few minutes later, the manager emerged, his face heavy, holding a tablet in his hands. He cleared his throat, scanning the room of employees before speaking in a stern, clear voice. "After thoroughly reviewing yesterday's security footage, I can confirm that sales associate John Williams did indeed engage in highly offensive, disrespectful, and racially discriminatory behavior towards these two customers." The murmurs immediately spread across the room. All eyes shifted to John, who was standing frozen in place, his face drained of color, as if all energy had been drained from him. He tried to open his mouth to say something, but his throat was dry, unable to utter a single word of defense. "This is a serious matter, completely contrary to our principles and business ethics," the manager continued, his gaze fixed firmly on John. "I am truly disappointed by this behavior." The other employees, who had previously laughed and agreed with John's actions, now lowered their heads, avoiding Michael's gaze, their faces filled with shame and regret. They realized they had unintentionally supported such cruel, discriminatory behavior. Michael silently watched John, his gaze powerful and resolute, as if he not only wanted to expose the truth but also wanted to deliver a stronger message to everyone. We live in a civilized society. Any act of racial discrimination, no matter how small, is completely unacceptable. There will be consequences. His words rang out clearly, like a wake-up call to everyone present in the room. Emily Torres, standing in the distance, looked at Michael with deep respect. She understood that this moment marked a powerful turning point, making everyone reflect on their own actions. Meanwhile, John Williams stood motionless, a cold shiver running down his spine. He had never imagined that his seemingly harmless behavior, based on his own arrogance and prejudice, could lead to such severe consequences. Michael had completely exposed the truth, and now everyone, especially John, understood that racist behavior and disrespecting others would always be exposed. It would never be allowed to be hidden or forgiven so easily. As soon as the manager finished speaking, The entire dealership fell into a suffocating silence. All eyes were still on John Williams, the sales associate who stood there, frozen in place, his expression a mix of terror and utter confusion. He had never imagined that in a single moment his entire career would be destroyed by his own arrogant words and actions. Michael gently took a step closer, his gaze calm yet stern and resolute. His voice, though soft, rang through the silence like a cold, cutting blade. "Mr. Williams, I believe you now understand the consequences of your actions, and I want to be very clear with you. You are not qualified to work here." Michael's words weren't loud, but they were so powerful and sharp that each syllable pierced through the complete silence, striking at the remnants of John's pride and arrogance. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but no words came. The smug and cold demeanor from yesterday had completely vanished, replaced by an undeniable feeling of shame and embarrassment. The manager, standing right next to Michael, immediately understood the depth of what had just been said. He turned to John with a look of strict authority and coldness, his voice firm and resolute in the stillness. "John Williams, with the severe racial discrimination and disrespect you've shown to our customers, I have no choice. Effective immediately, you are terminated." The manager's words landed like a final judgment, causing everyone in the dealership, employees and customers alike, to collectively hold their breath. No one dared to speak. They simply stood frozen, witnessing a conclusion that they all recognized was entirely just and deserved. John Williams lowered his head, his eyes hollow and full of despair. He knew he could no longer beg or make any excuses, as his actions and attitude from the day before were undeniable, beyond any defense. He slowly turned away, walking out in humiliation and cold silence, each step echoing like a bitter reminder to everyone of the consequences of looking down on others. Michael stood there, not feeling any sense of satisfaction or self-congratulation. To him, this was not just a personal punishment. It was a clear and decisive message to everyone witnessing. Any act of racial discrimination must be paid for. He turned to his parents, gently placing his hand on his father's shoulder, his gaze tender yet filled with determination. "I'm sorry you had to go through this, but today, at least we've shown everyone here that injustice will never defeat human dignity and self-respect." His parents nodded gently, their eyes misting over. But this time, the tears weren't from hurt. They were tears of emotion, pride, and gratitude for the resilience and bravery of their son. And in the chilling silence of the dealership, everyone standing there understood that the lesson they had just witnessed would forever be etched in their minds. Not just for John Williams, but for all those who had ever looked down on or treated others unjustly due to prejudice. For from this moment forward, they would always remember one important truth. No one has the right to look down on another person because of their appearance or the color of their skin. And those who make that mistake will sooner or later have to pay the price. As the silence still enveloped the room, Michael gently turned his gaze toward the corner where Emily Torres was standing. His eyes softened, filled with sincerity and warmth as he looked at the young woman, the only one who had bravely stood up to protect the dignity and treated his parents with true kindness the day before. "Emily Torres," Michael's voice spoke, breaking the silence with a deep, gentle tone. All the employees immediately turned to look at Emily, who was now startled to hear her name called out so clearly. "Yes, it's me," Emily stammered, stepping forward a few steps, her voice trembling with surprise and emotion. Michael smiled reassuringly, then continued with a calm yet firm tone. "On behalf of my parents, I sincerely thank you for what you did yesterday. You were the only one in this dealership who treated my parents with true respect and kindness." Emily blushed slightly, her heart racing, unsure how to respond to such heartfelt gratitude. But Michael didn't stop there. He turned to the manager, speaking clearly and decisively. "I've decided to purchase the supercar that my parents looked at yesterday, the $3 million car, and I want all the commission from this sale to go directly to Emily Torres." The room erupted in murmurs of surprise and admiration. Emily's eyes widened in disbelief at what she had just heard. She nervously responded, "Sir, I only did what was right. I really can't accept this." Michael smiled gently, his eyes warm and sincere as he looked at Emily. "No, you deserve it, Emily. People like you, who courageously defend dignity and treat others kindly, regardless of appearance or skin color, are the ones who truly deserve to be recognized and rewarded." The manager, standing nearby, nodded in agreement. He stepped forward, his voice formal as he announced clearly to everyone present, "I fully agree with Mr. Michael, and I would also like to announce another important decision. Starting today, Emily Torres will be promoted to senior manager of our dealership." The room immediately filled with applause, cheers of congratulations echoing with sincerity. Emily stood there, her eyes glistening with emotion, unable to believe the miracle that had just happened. From across the room, a few colleagues who had once been skeptical and dismissive of Emily now lowered their heads, silently questioning their previous actions and misguided thoughts. Michael gently moved forward, extending his hand to shake Emily's. His gaze was filled with admiration and respect. "Thank you once again, Emily. You've shown us that, in any circumstance, kindness and compassion will always triumph." Emily shook Michael's hand, her eyes now shining with joy, pride, and deep gratitude. She understood that what she had done the day before was not just a small act, but a clear testament to everyone that the true value of each person lies in their character and compassion, not in appearance or social status. Standing beside Michael, his parents looked at Emily with warm, affectionate eyes, as if she were a beloved member of their family. They no longer felt hurt. Instead, there was a sense of lightness, infinite gratitude toward the young woman who had stood up for them when they were at their weakest. And in that unforgettable moment, everyone realized that Emily Torres's small but sincere act from the day before had created a profound change, leaving behind a deeply meaningful lesson. True kindness will always be cherished and rewarded as it truly deserves. As the silence continued to envelop the entire room, Michael gently turned his gaze toward the corner where Emily Torres stood. His expression softened, filled with sincerity and warmth as he looked at the young woman, the only one who had boldly stood up to protect the dignity and treat his parents with true kindness the day before. "Emily Torres," Michael spoke, his deep voice breaking the silence. All the employees immediately turned to look at Emily, who was now startled to hear her name called so clearly. "Yes, it's me," Emily stammered, taking a few steps forward, her voice trembling with surprise and emotion. Michael smiled reassuringly, then continued with a calm yet firm tone. "On behalf of my parents, I sincerely thank you for what you did yesterday. You were the only one in this dealership who treated my parents with true respect and kindness." Emily blushed slightly, her heart racing, unsure how to respond to such heartfelt gratitude. But Michael didn't stop there. He turned to the manager, speaking clearly and decisively. "I've decided to purchase the supercar that my parents looked at yesterday, the $3 million car, and I want all the commission from this sale to go directly to Emily Torres." The room immediately erupted into whispers of surprise and admiration. Emily's eyes widened in disbelief at what she had just heard. She nervously responded, "Sir, I only did what was right. I really can't accept this." Michael smiled gently, his eyes warm and sincere as he looked at Emily. "No, you deserve it, Emily. People like you, who courageously defend dignity and treat others kindly, regardless of appearance or skin color, are the ones who truly deserve to be recognized and rewarded." The manager, standing nearby, nodded in agreement. He stepped forward, his voice formal as he announced clearly to everyone present, "I fully agree with Mr. Michael. And I would also like to announce another important decision. Starting today, Emily Torres will be promoted to senior manager of our dealership." The room immediately filled with applause, cheers of congratulations echoing with sincerity. Emily stood there, her eyes glistening with emotion, unable to believe the miracle that had just happened. From across the room, a few colleagues who had once been skeptical and dismissive of Emily now lowered their heads, silently questioning their previous actions and misguided thoughts. Michael gently moved forward, extending his hand to shake Emily's. His gaze was filled with admiration and respect. "Thank you once again, Emily. You've shown us that, in any circumstance, kindness and compassion will always triumph." Emily shook Michael's hand, her eyes now shining with joy, pride, and deep gratitude. She understood that what she had done the day before was not just a small act, but a clear testament to everyone that the true value of each person lies in their character and compassion, not in appearance or social status. Standing beside Michael, his parents looked at Emily with warm, affectionate eyes, as if she were a beloved member of their family. They no longer felt hurt. Instead, there was a sense of lightness, infinite gratitude toward the young woman who had stood up for them when they were at their weakest. And in that unforgettable moment, everyone realized that Emily Torres's small but sincere act from the day before had created a profound change, leaving behind a deeply meaningful lesson. True kindness will always be cherished and rewarded as it truly deserves. After the heartfelt gratitude toward Emily, Michael gently gestured for his parents to leave the dealership. The three of them walked slowly but with great dignity, silently passing by the faces that were now bowed in deep reflection, leaving behind a profound silence that was almost haunting. No words were spoken further. The footsteps of the CEO family echoed softly on the marble floors, each step carrying the weight of a reminder to everyone of the consequences of thoughtlessness, prejudice, and racial discrimination that they had just witnessed. The dealership's glass door closed gently behind them, but the lingering impact of this story remained, resonating in the minds of those still in the room. John Williams, once proud of his position and arrogance, now left the dealership in the deepest shame and bitter defeat. He had realized that once prejudice and contempt govern one's actions, one inevitably loses their own dignity and worth. The other employees who had once laughed carelessly and unknowingly contributed to the hurt of others now stood frozen in shock and remorse. They realized that their indifference or complicity in these unjust actions had made them accomplices to wrongdoing. Customers in the dealership also stood silently, reflecting deeply. In their eyes was a profound self-questioning about how they had often judged others based on appearance, skin color, or social status. Emily Torres stood still, her eyes fixed on the door that had just closed. In her heart was warmth, gratitude, but also a meaningful contemplation. She understood that her small but courageous act had sparked something larger than money or success. It had ignited a deep awareness of compassion and equality. The manager observed quietly, realizing that today's lesson wasn't just for John or the employees in the dealership, but also an important reminder for him. As a leader, he must always remain vigilant, ensuring that every team member understands the core values of respect and kindness in both work and life. Minutes passed in silence, as everyone sank deep into their private thoughts, rethinking themselves. They realized that what truly mattered wasn't sales, money, or fame, but how we treat each other, how we perceive and judge every individual. Outside, the Rolls-Royce gently rolled away, disappearing around the corner. But the lesson and powerful message left by the CEO family would remain forever in the minds of those who witnessed it today. Never judge a person based on their appearance or the color of their skin. Kindness and respect are the only true measures of a person's worth. And from that day forward, whenever a new customer walked into the luxury dealership, all the employees would remember the story of the CEO family. They understood that this event was not just a memorable moment but an eternal reminder of the deep value of kindness, equality, and respect. It was the most haunting, powerful, and yet beautiful lesson they had ever received. Thank you for listening to today's meaningful story. Through the journey of the CEO family, we can recognize that kindness and respect always hold far more value than prejudice or appearance. Never judge others based solely on their looks or skin color, for the true value of each person always lies deep within their character and actions. What about you? Have you ever witnessed or experienced a situation where you or someone else was treated unfairly because of appearance or skin color? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and found it meaningful, please like, share the video, and subscribe to our channel to support us in spreading positive messages to everyone. Goodbye, and we look forward to seeing you in the next stories.